friends. Welcome to Wednesday night. You will see in the background the very rare domesticated house cat with no tail. The other one is around somewhere. They're very faithful attenders of Wednesday night, as are all you who come. Shout out to our Havel Bradford small group who's meeting tonight. We got a big crowd in the Thatcher household, so hello to everyone there. And we're back in James tonight, so hope you've been having a good week. Hope you've been enjoying the Abraham series on Sundays. And we are up to one of my favorite stories. For those of you who've been tracking with us, you have the video with the knife and Abraham and the story of his sacrifice of Isaac. So that is coming. Pastor Brian Spicer. Yes. Appreciate Pastor Brian Spicer. Appreciate the Thatchers. Snacks are good and abundant in the small group. So great. Glad to be able to hang out with y'all. So yeah, Abraham sacrifices Isaac on Sunday. So get pumped for that. Hi, Layla. And we're going to jump back into James tonight. So James 4. But right before, thought we'd go over some quick DIY fails. DIY, if you are not familiar, is do it yourself, which does not end well in a lot of situations. Like this DIY pool. That's the truck bed pool. Not extremely popular, but works for some people. Hey, look at this. Someone added a ton of lights. That is very random and very bright. One way to fix your overheating laptop, like there's a bunch of things you can do. You can give it space around the laptop. There are little cooling tables you can put it on that have a fan underneath it to keep it cool. Or you can just drill like 100 holes in the bottom of it. So yeah, no wrong answers here. This light switch, whoever put that in definitely was on the struggle bus that day. Just cut off the side of it apparently. Look at that fix of the kitchen sink. We have a extension hose similar to this, what you see there, that comes in our kitchen. And for some reason, the hose just kind of falls out now. So I might need to do something like this. I'm going to take very good notes of whatever this dad did to fix it. And I'm going to fix ours. It's going to be great. I actually don't know how it's supposed to work now that there's all those things in there. But how about that deck? Like, what are the odds of that deck actually staying standing when somebody jumps into the pool? I'm going to go with odds are not high. There's a little porch you could see in the background, and I could just see somebody coming and jumping onto there, and then everything collapsing. So that is a nightmare, is what that's called. Oh, look at that, a fan on the back of the car. Sort of cool. Don't know how they expect to see out of their back windshield, but yeah. It's inventive, like very creative. Microwave mailbox. What I don't understand is why it needs to be plugged in like that. It's that's a lot going on right now. I kind of a cool idea to take a microwave and make it your mailbox, but not to plug it in and have power to it. That's disturbing. Like, who makes a nightlight like that? Not okay. DIY. Oh, the denim couch cover. If you're wondering what to do with all of your old jeans, just sew them into a cover. That is not great. Hey, they're everywhere. That just does not look right. Sort of creative, but I don't know. That's a lot of jeans. The pillows, I just can't. Hey, just a fun fact: when you're renting a house, you should not be cutting holes in the air vents and the ductwork. Okay, so if any of you are renters, please be nice with the house that you're renting. We saw this dad who painted the light yellow. I think we've seen this before. If you're putting a beam up like a mantle, don't use liquid nails. Like, use actual nails, and then the stuff that you put on top of it will probably stay there. Just get a new couch. Like, this is a lot. I'm gonna guess this had something to do with animals, but That's basically just duct tape now. Um, Interesting. The yeah, yes, duct tape does fix everything, but in that case, I think it's time to move on. The wooden fireplace, like I don't know exactly, like it looks kind of cool, but there's you can't build a fire in there, or your home is going to go up in flames. This is kind of creative, but again, it, for a lot of reasons, no, nope. Toilet seat guitar, no. I, this is Oh, here we go. I know. I know. I should have used page up and page down. Totally my fault. All right. COVID test, USB. I mean, I think too soon for that. Too soon. Uh, let's see. Um, Aluminum tread tiles for the bathroom. I mean, I don't think this is the worst idea. I think it's going to be kind of like in the winter, you step out of the shower and you want to step onto something warm. I don't think those tiles will be warm, but compared to the toilet seat guitar, zip ties. We've seen those for shower to hold up your shower curtain. And ugh, the boyfriend who made a pillow out of his chest hair. That's gross. There is nothing romantic about that whatsoever. Burgers Community Church does not support that kind of artwork. Yes. Thank you, Layla. It's so gross. All right. So yeah, DIY fails. Let's talk about James. So if you remember, we just finished up James 3 several weeks ago. Remember, we had a week off. We talked about Hagar last week. But before that, we spent a couple weeks talking about the tongue in James 3 and our words. And then we talked about wisdom. And now, as we head into chapter 4, James is going to call the church, you adulterous people. It's great. Why? Well, let's set this up. If you grew up with brothers and sisters, you know that siblings fight. You have brothers, you most likely fought physically. If there was a mix of brothers and sisters, you probably weren't allowed to hit each other. So the fighting was more psychological warfare, but siblings fight. But the good thing is, if you have a healthy dynamic and a healthy family, you make up, you come back to the fact that you love each other. And as you grow and mature, the fights should decrease, love increases, and ideally, adult siblings should fight very rarely, ideally. Well, just as much as physical brothers and sisters fight, Christian brothers and sisters fight too. The problem is a lot of times the love doesn't bring us back together. A lot of times we can drive wedges in to separate us, and they keep us apart. You see this at the very inception of Christianity. The church was almost split in two in the New Testament times as Jewish believers and Gentile believers warred over who was really saved. You see, it did split the church a couple centuries later between the West and the East. We went Catholic and Orthodox and divided in half, and the feud got angry regarding issues of authority. And at one point, the West Church, the Catholics, were on their way to go fight the Muslims in the Fourth Crusade, and they never made it to them because they stopped and fought the Eastern Church and overthrew their capital city, Constantinople, which I'm sure was a wonderful relief to the Muslims. They were all geared up, ready to fight. Sorry, guys, war's off. What? Why? Okay. Well, the Christians are fighting each other. Oh, that was easy. They were too busy killing one another to focus on their actual opponents. And it's been said that the dirt in Europe is stained with the blood of professing Christians who were murdered by other professing Christians. Fighting among Christ followers in America is unfortunately a story too. If you read the history of the church in America and Canada, the Canadian chapters are very boring. It's like they read the Bible, they ate salmon, and they talked about their feelings. But then when you read about the early church in America, it's like they talked about baptism and they disagreed. They pulled out knives and they shivved each other, and they talked about worship. And this one guy shot this other guy, and on and on. It was like any issue Christians talked about in America, we went to war over, which makes for fun reading, but it's also very depressing reading, right? Now look at the church today. I think I've told you the story before. There was an article years ago about the police in Jerusalem having to go to one of the holiest sites in Jerusalem, which is the tomb of Jesus. the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it's called. And they went in there to break up a fight because two groups of monks had gathered to do a procession. And there was an argument over how the procession should proceed. Someone threw a punch and it was on. And the police had to come because there were monks just like kicking and punching and beating each other up. A full-on brawl at the site of the tomb where Jesus rose from the dead. It's great. Great for all of us. That's us. Spinoza, the 17th century Jewish philosopher, said, I've often wondered that persons who make boast of professing the Christian religion, namely love, joy, peace, temperance, charity toward all men, should quarrel with such rancorous animosity and display daily toward one another such bitter hatred. That is, rather than the virtues which they profess, the readiest criteria of their faith. He was saying, you want to know who the Christians are? Look for the people fighting each other. Very sad. Never better than a good monk fight. Unless we think, oh, those silly Christians of the 17th century or those crazy monks, we need to look around at ourselves, right? You can read books by this new breed of atheists, people who aren't just atheist, which means don't believe in God, but they're also very angry at Christianity, particularly. Many of their writings aren't based in logic at all. And I don't just say that because I disagree with their position. They just have really poor arguments. Primarily, the books are just full of rants against the hypocrisy of Christians because of what we do to each other. And we don't have to look at history or look around at other cultures. We do this. We fight over churches and denominations, maybe not physically, but we love to talk badly about people who have different standards or use a different version of the Bible or worship differently than we do. Like, you're bad, we're good. It separates us. I remember when I was in Bible college, we had Spirit Week, which was supposed to like bring everybody together by doing a whole bunch of fun stuff. And we made it into a competition between freshmen, sophomores, seniors, and we all fought with each other all week. I was in a church basketball league for years, and it got heated and it got ugly. We do this. So James is going to talk about this in James chapter 4. He's going to say, what causes fights and quarrels among you? So he's assuming they're there. He knows they are, and they still are. So I would pose that question to you. What causes fights among you? Think about it. From the individual Christians you interact with on a daily basis, and the Christian groups that you intersect with or hear about in your social sphere, what causes the friction? What makes you angry at that person or wanting to talk badly about them or willing to square off against some other church? What causes that? And James is going to get into the heartbeat of this letter. We talked about wisdom a few weeks ago, but it wasn't so much about wisdom. It was about peace, right? That real wisdom brings forth peace. And James said the problem is your community is not peaceful. It's unstable, and it's unstable because you're foolish. And he listed off some reasons why. Because you're envious, because you're self-absorbed, and so therefore you're earthly, unspiritual, demonic. James didn't have a problem calling things straight. He says you're being really demonish and unspiritual, and just stop it. So there's a problem, there's conflict, and so far in the book of James, we've been talking about the branches of conflict. Some of you, James says the way you use your tongue, the way you talk about people is really unhealthy. Some of you, the way you treat people who are different than you, or the way you treat the poor is unhealthy. It's not good. And now James is going to take us into the tree trunk and say, this is the issue. And then he's going to take us even deeper into the roots and say, hey, this is the real issue. And then he'll close out by showing us how to uproot the problem of a lack of peace in the Christian community. Or if you don't want to use the uprooting of trees as your illustration, like you're green, that bothers you, James will diagnose our illness, and then he'll uncover an even deeper diagnosis, and then he'll apply the remedy. That's where we're going. The initial diagnosis starts with a question in chapter 4, verse 1. Here we go. It says, what causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? I want to know the cause. What's causing the drama? Why are you arguing and talking bad about each other? Why are there battles and wars among you? And it's almost like he's expecting them to give an answer. Well, they believe this, or that person talks too much, or they did that. But then he moves on. And look at his answer of what causes this. Is it not this, that your passions are at war? And James says it's not about whatever issue you're arguing about. You know why you have wars and conflicts? The problem is you. And more specifically, he says the problem is your passions, your desires, and he uses the word hedone, which is where we get the word hedonism, which is the pursuit of pleasure. He says, your self-indulgent, sinful desires are the problem. You want this self-satisfaction, and that passion is at war within you. And he doesn't mean within your church. He means literally a war within your body. That you and I have all these warring passions inside us, these pleasures that we want, and that's what causes conflict in our community. Wait a minute. Why does my desire for pleasure cause war? James, you're saying the reason war exists is because we want pleasure? How in the world does that work? Well, he tells us in verse 2, you desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. So he's like, hey, you want something and you don't get it, so you get mad about it. You see somebody else who has something that you want and you talk badly about them, or you pick a fight and start some issue. And you notice he kind of wraps up the thought. What's causing fights and quarrels? Your desires and unmet desires. That's the issue. The arguments are coming because of you. But James never focuses on what the original community was arguing about. Like one guy was playing the lute, one guy was playing the lyre. They hated each other and they fought over their musical instruments. No, because the issue doesn't matter. Whatever you're arguing about, James says it's not about the thing. That when things escalate into a war or a battle, into murder, into attacking each other, it's no longer about the issue. It's about your heart, your desire to be awesome, your desire to win. It's about you and your problems. Incidentally, your mom probably said this to you growing up. Why are you fighting? Well, he took that, or she said this. It doesn't matter. You be nice to each other. She didn't care about the issue. She said, you're the problem. It's about you. And there is no issue that two people that are following Jesus could fight about where the issue necessitates a war. There just isn't. Maybe you're thinking, wait, you don't understand what they said. You don't understand what they did. Or Russ, there are some theological issues that need to be defended. Well, think about this. Calvinism versus Arminianism has been debated and fought over for centuries. I heard a story about two guys fighting over this, and the question was asked afterwards, how should they be punished? And the answer was the Arminian should be punished because he had a choice as to whether or not to fight, but the Calvinist was predestined to be in that fight. He had to hit him. Little theological humor there. Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. And some of you may be like, I have to fight this battle if it arises. I have these daggers of truth at the ready. False. Not true. No war needed. John Piper wrote about the intersection of Charles Simeon, who was a Calvinist pastor, and John Wesley, who was famously Arminian. So Piper told the story of Charles Simeon coming in to meet with an elderly John Wesley, saying, I hear you're called an Arminian and I'm called a Calvinist. I guess we're supposed to pull our daggers out now, right? Before we do, let me ask you a few questions. Do you believe that one is saved by grace through faith? Do you despair of your own ability to make yourself right before God? Yes, I do. Do you cry out with empty hands of faith, saying the Lord Jesus has to pay for my sin by his substitutionary atonement? Yes, I do. Do you believe that it's his grace that carries you all the way to completion until eternity? Yes. Do you believe that when you stand before God, you will say, I'm here through no merit of my own, but only by the completed work of Jesus Christ? Yes, I do. He said, let's put our daggers away because we agree about more than we disagree. So we can talk about issues that we disagree on. Some of you need to, and it'll be profitable for you to sit down with somebody from a different theological bent and discuss some issues. There'll be issues you have to talk about, right? But if it escalates into a war, the minute it becomes a war, it's not about the issue anymore. It's about your heart because you want to be awesome or you want to be right. James says the problem is your desires, your pleasures, that you want you to win. And that's why you fight. That's the problem. That's the issue. And you are wrong. We dealt with this a lot, or I dealt with this a lot during that year where we were kind of all shut up in our houses. And it was really easy to jump online or jump in your phone and start a fight with somebody. And you may have legitimate reasons why you were on separate sides of an issue, but there is no reason for us to go to war against each other. There's no reason to fight with each other. And it all boiled down to we need to be right. We need to win. And that's not how Christ followers are supposed to be. If you've ever been in that situation where you're talking to some other Christian and they start talking about their pastor and how wonderful he is and the series he's preaching through and how great their church is, and you're listening and your heart doesn't rise up in celebration of their learning and growing in their faith, instead you're waiting for them to finish, you can go, oh, my pastor's great too. Actually, he's better than yours. Or somebody tells you about a mission trip, and instead of rejoicing with them, you're like, actually, I've been on like 2, 3, and everybody came to Jesus. Everybody I talked to believed. And you can't rest. It's like when somebody tells a story, you're waiting to tell yours, like, I'm awesomer. And you just want to get it out. Why do we do this? Somebody talks about social justice. Well, we're more socially just than you. Or my community is more missional than yours, or more excited about Jesus than yours. My group is more, I'm more me. And it just becomes the celebration of me, right? Why do we categorize and dismiss whole groups of people? Have you ever sat around and just criticized a church you've never actually attended? Why do we do that? Because we want to be awesome. We want our group to be better. So it's not about peace. It's not about mutual encouragement and celebration of growth. It's about me being awesome. Less you and more me. It's very much one of the reasons that I appreciate the network of churches and pastors that we have. And we've talked about this, that the relationship and networking has changed in the last 20 years. Maybe we wouldn't have been as close now as Brian Spicer and Anthony Milas and I are 20 years ago. I'm glad it's not 20 years ago. I'm glad it's now, because all we do is encourage each other. We give each other a hard time sometimes, but all I want is God to be present in their lives, in their family, in their church, and the gospel to be spread. And anything we can do to encourage each other and work together, let it be so. So James says, hey, stop fighting. It's not working. It's not good. And then he says, you know how you can tell things are bad? The rest of verse 2 says, you don't have because you don't ask. You might be handing out flyers. You might be talking bad about another group, trying to grow your group. But is it even about the gospel anymore? You aren't even asking God for help. If you're not praying, but you're just working hard to get your group or your passion or your cause to win, that's a problem. And verse 3, you ask and you do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. So maybe you're praying, but what you're praying for is weird. Like, God sent us people, but not so people will meet Jesus, but so I can tell everybody about how many people came and I won, right? James says God can't get behind that. So if you're praying, God, how can I be greater? That's weird. And then he turns the corner in the next verse. He doesn't say all this has to stop because the Bible says to love people and you're breaking the love people rule, so you have to stop that. He doesn't say that. Instead, he establishes that, hey, if you're fighting amongst one another, if you're making war with your brothers and sisters, you're doing that because you have a selfishness in you, a selfish desire. You're pursuing the glorification of you. But rather than tell you to stop it and just love people more, this is what he says in verse 4. You adulterous people. And he's not talking about them. We're going to stop here for the night, but he's not just talking about them. He's not saying they're cheating on their husbands and wives. He's talking about their relationship with God. And he looks at them and he says, adulterous. James is bringing up an Old Testament image where God told his people in Isaiah, your maker is your husband. I'm a husband to you. We're told in the New Testament that the church is the bride of Christ. Jeremiah the prophet said, like a woman unfaithful to her husband, so you were unfaithful to me. In the Old Testament, what the people of God repeatedly did is, though they were God's people, they were in a sense married to him, linked to him. They took his name. They would worship idols. They'd go play around with other gods. They'd chase what other cultures were doing. And the interesting thing is all the other gods they would worship had some sort of weird sexual practice associated with them. So God would say, you're committing adultery. You're cheating on me. You're my people. You're meant to worship me and enjoy me. And you're going out and you're hooking up with other gods. It's messed up and I don't like it. And James is going to import that to us. He's going to say, hey, if you're in the church, if you've taken on Jesus' name, if you're a Christian, if you're associating with him, you're chasing your own glory, you're chasing your group's power, you're chasing your own might. If you're doing that, you're cheating on me. You're supposed to be chasing me. You're supposed to be with me. So if you've taken my name, you belong to me, and you're going and dating popularity, or every time I look up, you're chasing after money, or you're just passionate about acceptance, that's what you long for, that's adultery. And James is going to go, even deeper and even straight to the root causes with us. Again, James is a book that hits hard. He didn't have a lot of time, apparently. He didn't write this super long letter, so he just gets straight to the point. He's like, hey, this is what following Jesus looks like. You're not doing it. You're not doing a good job with this. These are the things that you need to change in order to be true to your relationship with God, in order to be true to the gospel, in order to be, it's one of those things where we have been trusted with the gospel. Can we be trusted to live that out? And James is going to continue to talk about that. I appreciate our community because this gives us a place to live it out. This gives us a place to talk about things. This gives us a place to disagree, but disagree in a way that we can still walk together, and where we can make mistakes, where we can have conflict, but where we can mend things with each other. We can ask forgiveness when it's needed, where we can change when we need to. The church is a good thing. God ordained the church because we weren't meant to live life alone. When I get by myself, when you get by yourself, you start to get inwardly focused, and everything becomes about you. And that's where we get into so much trouble. So we're doing well. We're doing a good job loving God. We're doing a good job loving people. And we do a good job not living for our story, but for the better, bigger story of God's rescue mission on earth. So that's where we're going to stop. Finish the other half next Wednesday. Always look forward to spending a few minutes with you. Those of you who are just here with me, I will see you on Sunday. Those of you who like to continue for the full hour, skip over to Bay State Baptist and listen to Brian Spicer, my buddy. Yes, you need to be nicer to Anthony Miles. Takeaways from tonight. Good to have friends, and good to have people we can trust and walk through this life with. All right, I appreciate y'all. Small group. Enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy your snacks. Those of you who are watching in from home or tuning in later, love you. We're praying for you, and we will see you on Sunday.